Welcome to Believing the Word with Pastor Dan Shunk. This program is an outpouring of the ministry going on at Calvary Chapel, Chambersburg in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. Here's what's coming up in today's message.
All the things that the Lord wants you to have. We've even put valuable things inside of that protected city. Now keep it. Don't give it up. Don't open the doors of your city to be vulnerable to the enemy. Don't let them come in because you let them in. Keep it. That's his charge to them. Man, I hear a father's voice in that, don't you? You know, I have given you this. Now keep it. Don't give it away. Don't let some enemy just come in and steal it.
Why did the city of God need walls and gates? Isn't God all about welcoming the stranger and loving the lost? Yes, he is. But we live in a broken world, and we need shelter from the sin and hatred that run rampant. The love of God and truth of his word can't be destroyed by Satan or his fallen angels, but they'll do everything they can to hurt those who've trusted in God. As Pastor Dan will challenge us today, the church needs to be a place of shelter from the lies and attacks of our enemy. Now here's Pastor Dan in the book of Nehemiah chapter 6, as he continues his message, Rule Well Your Own Spirit.
You look at the way the wind of the Spirit moved in 1969, 70, 71 through the Jesus people and the Jesus Revolution. And you think, what changed? Why didn't that happen, in the 30s, the 40s, the 50s? It just took some people that were yielded to God to say, we want everybody to come to Christ. And then the Lord's Spirit moved and a generation of people got saved. It just takes a faithful few, 2% of the Israelites returned to the land. And even amongst the ones that returned, it just took part of them to do this work, and they get it done in 52 days. Now, I didn't plan to stop there in verse 15, so let me just reread 15 here. So the wall was finished in the 25th day of the month. It took 52 days, and it came to pass that when all our enemies heard it, and all the nations that were about us saw these things, they were much cast down in their own eyes, for they perceived that this work was wrought of God. God gets the glory. The nations look at this 52-day project where all these people from the nation come together. They each had their section of wall. Everybody was both defending and building, and they all did this work. And when it's finally done, the nations around them don't say, "Wow, this Nehemiah, he's a pretty smart guy." The nations around say, God is at work. God is doing something. And I pray that the Lord blows the doors off of this place someday, and we're just sitting with people everywhere that want to know the Word of God. And when that happens, I pray that every one of us says, God did that. It's not going to be because of my great personality. It's not because we're so awesome. It's going to be a work of the Lord to see that happen. And every time the Lord works, that's the right answer. Does the pot boast itself against the potter? No way. It's the potter that did the work. We're just the vessels, and we want God to use us. And so I love the fact that they can't help but notice God is doing something over there in that, what's that city called again? Oh, Jerusalem. Yeah, that's it. God is doing something over there. Man, would to God that could be said of Calvary here sometime soon. God is doing something over there. The next time somebody says, wow, that X, Y, and Z person, they're amazing. Nope, no, I'm not. But God is. Oh man, what a blessing. What an amazing thing that is. 100 years it lay in ruins, and it took less than 2 months just to rebuild it. Verse 17, moreover, in those days, the nobles of Judah sent many letters to Tobiah, and the letters of Tobiah came back unto them. And this is why, for there were many in Judah that were sworn unto him. They were close friends, that means. They were sworn unto him because he was the son-in-law of Shechaniah, the son of Arah, and his son Johanan, had taken the daughter of Meshullam, the son of Berechiah. Also, they reported his good deeds, that's Tobiah's good deeds. They reported Tobiah's good deeds before me, and they uttered my words to Tobiah. And Tobiah sent letters to put me in fear. See, of the whole time that Nehemiah is stirring up the faithful few to do the work, remember that Tobiah was not just this foreigner, this stranger, but that he had married into the priestly family. So many people in Israel trusted Tobiah, and they couldn't see, the plain reasons why Nehemiah was being so hard on him. Oh, come on, Nehemiah, you should let him into your plans, let him help you. Well, he knew the whole time that Tobiah was in cahoots with Sanballat and Gershom and these others that were against the work of the Lord. Why didn't their nations and why didn't their people rebuild Jerusalem if they were so interested in doing that before Nehemiah got there? They certainly didn't do it themselves. And so just understand that this is another element of what Nehemiah was having to put up with. It's also interesting that it's never once explained why Sanballat, Tobiah, Gershom, it's never once explained why these people, some of them Samaritans, some of them Arabians, all these surrounding nations, okay, but also Samaritans, which were raised in this mixed Jewish religion, right? It's never once explained why any of them hated Israel, or they didn't want Jerusalem rebuilt. They didn't want the temple. It's never once explained. Oh, their cop-out reason of you're going to rebel against the king is there, but it's never once explained. And that's still the same way it is today. There is no reason for anti-Semitism today. There are many people today that still hate Israel. It's just satanic. There's never a reason in the scripture why you will find somebody that hates Israel. It's just satanic. It's ingrained from a demonic spiritual position to come against the Israelites. Oh, from time to time, there's somebody that has a particular reason, and they try to pass that reason out like candy and get everybody else to hate the Jews as well. And so this Tobiah was in cahoots with a lot of Israelites. Verse 1 of chapter 7. Now it came to pass when the wall was built, and I had set up the doors, and the porters and the singers and the Levites were appointed, that I gave my brother Hanani and Hananiah, the ruler of the palace, charge. I gave them charge over Jerusalem, for he was a faithful man, and he feared God above many. I think it's J. Vernon McGee that points out in verse 1, it's very interesting that in verse 1, it says that he not only set up the walls and set up the doors and the porters would be the watchmen that would be watching for the enemy to come, right? But they also went forward to set up the singers and the Levites. They did the physical work, right? And even for church today, there's a certain element of physical work to prepare the ministry of worshiping the Lord. And then there's the spiritual work. Then there's the spiritual work of setting up the singers and the Levites that were Levites were the teachers, right? They were the ones that Ezra would have been appointing in the synagogues to be the teachers. So both the physical work and the spiritual work is both being accomplished here. But interesting in verse 2, Nehemiah proves finally that this whole time he's proving to them that he was not in this for selfish advancement. He had a very loose grip on power. Power can come and power can go as God leads. And in verse 2, it clearly makes a point to say Nehemiah passed off the mayoralship of Jerusalem to this man. And he could have controlled it. He could have kept it. I think of the same thing in our own country. I don't know how much you've read about the revolution and the founding of our country, particularly when George Washington was appointed the first president. There was no term limits. You may not know that, but today we have the fact that the president can only serve up to 10 years, right? Most of the time our presidents serve for 2 terms, but they can serve up to 10 years. That's not the way it was for George Washington. George Washington could have kept serving, and there was people that wanted him to. And he said, no, that's not good. We need other godly perspectives. And he intentionally stepped down and let the next man become the president. And I see that same character here in Nehemiah, Nehemiah could have been the mayor for life, but he said, nope, you know what? That's not my calling. That's not what God's called me to. In fact, he told the king of Persia that he was going to go back, didn't he? Do you remember that? He knew what his calling was. His calling was to go and strengthen the city to the point where the people can flourish. And then he passes the power off. You want to know if you're a person of integrity? Can you let go of power? This shows he's more concerned about God's reputation than his own. If he was in it for himself and his own reputation, he would have kept that. There's no way he would have given up on that. But he was concerned about everyone coming to know God and therefore glorifying God. That's what he's concerned about, not his own. Verse 3, it says, Nehemiah, he said unto them, let not the gates of Jerusalem be opened until the sun is hot. In other words, don't even, the gates are shut at night, overnight, right? And typically they might open the gates in the morning, but he's saying, listen, don't even open the gates until it's noon. That just for extra safety, till everybody gets in this routine to not come and attack us. They need to get stronger. They've got the wall, they've got the gates now. Now they need to rebuild inside the city. The people are needing a lot of refurbishing themselves. You were going to find out that many or most of the houses in Jerusalem still lie in rubble. Did I mention only 2% of the Jews came back to the land? There's a lot of property that is just still in ruins and nobody's occupying it. And so he recognizes they need to get strengthened yet. So don't open yourselves up to vulnerabilities early in the morning. Don't even open the gate until noon is the idea here, when the sun is hot. And just continuing in verse 3, and while they stand by, let them shut the doors and bar them and appoint watchers of the inhabitants of Jerusalem, everyone in his watch, and everyone to be over against his house. So be sure you lock up at night as well, is the idea. So the commission that Nehemiah has given to the new mayor here is, we have worked for the security of this city. Now keep it. And that's the same thing that God would say. Look, a lot of people here, even in this room, have been raised with godly parents that would look at you and they would say, listen, we have built you into a fortified city. We have given you all the things that the Lord wants you to have. We've even put valuable things inside of that protected city. Now keep it. Don't give it up. Don't open the doors of your city to be vulnerable to the enemy. Don't let them come in because you let them in. Keep it. That's his charge to them. Man, I hear a father's voice in that, don't you? I have given you this. Now keep it. Don't give it away. Don't let some enemy just come in and steal it. Look, verse 4 now, it's the last part. We're not going to, this chapter, I don't know if you've looked ahead, but it's 73 verses. You've seen that maybe? We're not going to read this. It's a list of names. I mean, we could read it. It'd just take us 6.5 minutes to just butcher all these names. I don't think we need to do that, but we kind of end right here. Verse 4 begins to explain to us why this list is here. And I believe it makes another point about ruling well our own spirit. Integrity, reputation, but now finally, gratitude. Ruling well your own spirit involves gratitude. Gratitude for others. Not concerned about your own credit. Not concerned about thanking yourself and making sure you get all the thanks. But making sure you recognize the others that you have to be thankful for. Chapter 7, verse 4. Now the city was large and great, but the people were few. And the houses were not built. Again, so much of it was still lying in ruins inside of Jerusalem. In verse 5, and my God put into mine heart to gather together the nobles and the rulers and the people, that they might be reckoned by genealogy. And I found a register. So he was going to count the people because he wanted to recognize all of the people by family that came back. How long ago was it? 80 or 90 years ago that they first started to come back under Joshua, right? Now Nehemiah completes his mission, and he does the same thing that Ezra did. Or not Ezra, at the end of Joshua, when Joshua returned, they wanted to count the people then as well. Why? We made the case back in Ezra chapter 2. They wanted to recognize the people of faith that came back into the land. So see, the Lord's putting that same thing into Nehemiah's heart. He's like, listen, my job is done. I've completed this step of what God had for me. I just want to recognize these faithful families that were dedicated, the people that went before me to start this work. Nehemiah said, I want to recognize them. I want to write their names down. And he realizes here in verse 5 that it's already been done by Ezra. And that's what happens here. Again, in verse 5, my God put it into my heart to gather together the nobles, the rulers, and the people, that they might be reckoned by genealogy. And I found a register of the genealogy of them, which came up at the first. And I found written therein. And now beginning in verse 6 is what he found. Okay? From verse 6, the first word of verse 6, the entire way to the very last word of the last verse, verse 73. That entire thing is an exact duplicate of Ezra chapter 2. It is the genealogy from the time that Joshua and Zerubbabel first came up. And so the idea here is Nehemiah saying, listen, I had it in my heart to, like, a lot of companies have this, right? They'll have the employee of the quarter. I just want to recognize them. They might even have the employee of the year down below that, right? This is the same idea. This is what Nehemiah is doing. He's like, listen, God put it in my heart to recognize these faithful families. How do you get on the employee of the month wall in God's economy? Faith. Faith, trusting God and serving him in belief. And so this, again, is the way God recognizes us, by our faith. And so Nehemiah doesn't have to create a genealogy because he finds out that it was already done, as recorded in Ezra chapter 2. So he probably, again, according to verse 4, the city was large, there wasn't many people, lots of houses are destroyed, and he finishes his project. Can you picture this? He's probably walking around Jerusalem, thinking, man, the wall is done. You ever get to the end of the project you're on and you just have that time to think? And he's probably just looking out, he's got a nice spot to look out over the city. And he realizes, like, wow, there's still a lot of ruined houses. There's really not that many of us here as compared to how big this city is capable of holding people. And then the Lord just puts it on his heart, like, man, these couple of people that are here, they really put their neck on the line to come. I'm gonna write them down. I'm gonna record them. And then he probably went into the temple and realized, like, what's that? Oh, well, it's already been done. The families that came back have already been recorded. And I love the fact that God puts it on his heart to not just ignore the fact that it was already done. God puts it on his heart to write it down again. Guys, this is an exact duplicate. Have you ever gotten to things like that in the scripture that are an exact duplicate? And you're like, Lord, you already gave that to me. Why'd you give it to me again? You already told me that. I didn't understand it the first time. No, But you see it the second time, and you're like, Lord, a list of like 70 verses of names. It's meaningless. No, it's not. No, it's not. We talked about this. So go back and I encourage you to go back and get the tape. Go listen to it again on the internet from Ezra chapter 2 and all the points we made about why this list is here. And this is to honor their faith. It's a hall of faith. To compliment them, to show gratitude to them for being willing to step out and do what they knew God wanted them to do, even though not many were doing it. And they're recorded forever. Twice, these families are recorded as being faithful and coming to God. Nehemiah didn't want to record these. King David, he set out to record the people, right? Why? He wanted to know his strength. How strong am I? How big is my army? And that's why David wanted a census. And that's ugly. Nehemiah wanted this census simply to write down these names. He wanted to put them up on his wall so people would walk by the employee of the month wall all the time and see, oh, wow, those were the faithful. He was doing it to honor them, not to boast himself in some strange way. I love this. This is the heart of God that Nehemiah thinks this way. I want to honor these people. Oh, wait, it was already written down? Well, I'm gonna copy them again. This is the heart of God. Psalm chapter 112, verse 6. Second half of verse 6. The righteous shall be an everlasting remembrance. See, that's the heart of God. He never forgets those that are his. He sees every one of our faithful actions. He knows us, and he doesn't forget. He knows the very hairs on our head. He knows things about us that we don't even know about ourselves. And he sees it all, and he never forgets. So that's what this is. Verse 6, the whole way to the end. I'm just not going to read it. It's literally the family names and how many from each family came back at the original coming back. And so it's an exact copy of Ezra chapter 2. You know, we may find these names hard to read or not interesting, but God finds them interesting. I really believe God is honored with this list, and they are blessed by their name and by their families, and also later in this section, they're also blessed by even their gifts that they brought with them. Everything these original families did in coming back to the land is remembered. What family it was by name, how many were in the family, what they brought with them to come back and bless God with, all of it is remembered. How beautiful is that? You know, we too are in a minority today. It's the same for us. You know, we're in really the same position as these few faithful were. We're often called the remnant, you know, that's left. And that's who we are. We too are the minority. But what does it say in the New Testament? The meek shall inherit the earth. So just have the same heart that Nehemiah has. And when the Lord comes back, we will inherit the earth with him. So press through to the end. And the way to do that is to rule well our own spirits. And the way to do that is to let the word of God dwell in us richly and be controlled by the Spirit of God. So I pray that these principles from the man Nehemiah is really impressed into our hearts tonight. You know your own integrity, know the integrity of people around you. Don't compromise God's standards to just in the name of cooperation or in the name of just being friendly. Don't do it. Don't do it. God can do more with a small, pure lump than he can with a large lump that's contaminated. You know, if you have a small loaf of bread that is pure and good, you can eat that and you can be sustained. But if you have a large lump of bread that gets contaminated, how much of it can you eat? None of it. It's all contaminated. And so be content in the days of small things and let the Lord lead. And number two there, reputation. Be concerned more about God's reputation than our own. Always be concerned about promoting God. We don't even promote our church. We don't even promote ourselves. We promote the fact that you can come here and learn Jesus. Take his yoke upon you. Learn of him. He is meek and lowly, right? That is what we have to offer. We're not even offering ourselves. We're not offering our church. We're offering Jesus Christ to people. And we're concerned about his reputation. And finally, be grateful for others' service. Don't worry about getting the recognition for ourselves. Just remember the people that have passed on their faith to us, right? Sometimes it's our parents, sometimes it's others. And Nehemiah took a minute to remember these faithful families, these ancestors that were the ones that came back. You know, there was 98% of Israel still back in Persia, in all these different places. Their names aren't recorded. But this faithful few, they're recorded. And Nehemiah remembers the impact that they had on his own life to want to go back and do this work that he did. And so remember them, the ones that have passed on their faith, and rejoice in them. Be grateful for them, right? And then pass that faith on to someone else ourselves.
We understand time is a precious commodity in this day and age. So we couldn't be more thrilled with your decision to tune in to Believing the Word with Pastor Dan Shunk. It seems as though society bombards our every waking moment with life-sapping ideologies and lies, stunting our relationship with Jesus. With that being said, we'd like to encourage all of our listeners to continue carving out time for Bible study, because this is where true living begins. Currently, Pastor Dan Shunk has been in the book of Nehemiah, where we learn of God's faithfulness to a nation living in the aftermath of sin and desolation. God used a common cupbearer, to revive a nation into wholeness. Nehemiah showed the nation of Israel that God was indeed a covenant keeper. Did any questions come to mind as you were listening to today's message? We'd be honored to answer them. All you have to do is call us at 717-500-1102. Again, the number to connect with us is 717-500-1102. Are you aware that there are many more messages like this one just waiting for your listening ear? That's right, and it's super easy to get to. Just head on over to cchambersburg.org and click on the Media tab. This will take you to all the teachings in our archive. You can also download our app to listen anytime and anywhere. Well, that's all the time we have, but we trust you'll be back for more. Thanks for learning with us on Believing the Word with Pastor Dan Shunk.